If you're not from here, it's really easy to look on a map and see Spokane, Washington right next to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho and think, well, those two places are probably very similar. I mean, they're only 30 minutes apart. But having lived in both places, I can tell you that is not the case. These are very, very different cities. And today we're going to go through all of those major differences to hopefully clear up any confusion in case you're looking at moving here. Hello and welcome to another episode of Living Life in North Idaho. My name is Trent and I've lived in this area for 32 years. If you're interested in knowing more about what it's like living, eating, working, playing, buying real estate here in Idaho or Eastern Washington, you have found the right channel. Go ahead and tap the subscribe button and make sure to hit the notification bell, because what that does, when I come out with a new video, you'll actually get notified. Because just because you're subscribed, that doesn't mean YouTube is going to push my videos to you and I might never see you again, and that would just break my heart. So make sure you tap the notification bell. So let's dive right in, guys. The major differences between living in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho and Spokane, Washington. Like I said, I've lived in both and there are major pros and cons to living in each. But to help cover this information, I'm going to share with you some of the data that goes into deciding if you want to live in a certain place. Things like what the education rankings are, the cost to buy a home, the ability to get a good job, and how much can you make here? Things that you really want to know, as well as some personal stories and experiences that I've had to hopefully help you decide what's going to be the right place for you to live. So diving into the first one, and probably one of the most important factors, is your cost of living. Obviously, with inflation and everything going up in price, a lot of people are looking to get moved to a place that's a little more affordable. And unfortunately, you're not going to find that in Coeur d'Alene. According to betterplaces.net, with a baseline being 100, Spokane's at about a 98 and Coeur d'Alene is a 114. So about a 17% difference there. But the major factor in that is the housing costs. And you have to forgive me, there's a lot of data, so I'm going to be looking at my notes here. But according to betterplaces.net, the cost of housing with the baseline being 100 is a 140 here in Coeur d'Alene and only a 94 over in Spokane. So you're definitely still able to find your $250,000, $300,000 houses over in Spokane, where in Coeur d'Alene, you have an average of about $560,000, $580,000. It fluctuates every month. So yes, that's going to be one of the biggest costs to you of living in Coeur d'Alene over Spokane. Again, though, that's not the whole story, so stick with me. Let's look at the taxes. The first tax we're going to look at is your sales tax. In Spokane, you have a 9% sales tax, and in Idaho, you only have a 6%. Now, something that does offset that tax in Spokane is the unprepared food you do not get taxed on. So when you go to buy your groceries, as long as there was nothing done to it and you're just buying the raw food, it does not have tax, and that can save you a pretty penny. The next tax we're going to look at is the income tax. Idaho, it used to be from like a 1.2 up to a 6.8. And for some reason, they just made it an average of 5.8% income tax, where Spokane does not have an income tax. They are implementing a long-term disability care tax that does come right off of your income, but according to them, it's not an income tax. So take it or leave it. Now, you'll have to talk to your accountant about where you fall in that bracket for those taxes. It's still too new. I'm not quite sure how it's going to work, but yeah, you're going to get some money taken off of your paycheck. It just depends on, I guess, what they're calling it. And the last tax we're going to look at is the property tax, and it has to be considered because of the cost of housing now. So in Spokane, you average about 1.2% on your property tax, where in Coeur d'Alene, you average about 0.62. So it is a very huge difference. And having owned houses in both states, I can tell you it's definitely felt when that tax bill is due. So let's move on to the next category, which is a major difference between the two cities, the laws and the enforcement of those laws. So Coeur d'Alene does have some goofy laws. You don't have to wear a helmet when you ride a motorcycle, which for some fellow riders, I ride a motorcycle, that can be fun until you lose a friend to riding a motorcycle. And then you realize, maybe that law is not so bad of an idea, but it's also kind of telling of Idaho that we're not here to babysit you. You're an adult. make good decisions, right? Where Spokane, I think they like to babysit a little bit more. The other major difference in laws is going to be your firearms. So while Spokane is definitely tightening up on their firearms laws, Coeur d'Alene is getting looser. We now have constitutional carry, which means I don't need the government's permission or a permit to carry a firearm on my person and conceal it. We're over in Washington. We'll get to that, but not so much the case. Another law that is telling of how Idaho is different than some states is corporal punishment is still allowed here. So if you still believe that spanking your kid is the best route to get them on course, you are allowed to do that here. Now, I don't know how everybody feels about that. I had corporal punishment growing up, and I think that it was a really great excuse for bad parenting, but I do see some kids where I go, no, I think maybe a little bit more of that probably would have helped them. So in Idaho, yes, that is allowed. If you are a landlord, the law definitely sides with you rather than the renter, something that is a major difference than Spokane. And lastly, being homeless is not illegal here, but a lot of the things that homeless do absolutely are. There's no drug use, petty crimes are prosecuted, you can't loiter, you can't illegally camp, and we'll dive into how that's very different over in Spokane now. Now guys, real quick, I can only pack so much information into these videos. I'm sure there's people that have questions that I'm not answering yet. So if that is the case and you are serious about getting moved here, feel free to reach out to me and my team at the phone number or email address listed below. There's also a website if you want to look at homes in the area, but that doesn't cover Spokane. You do have to reach out so we can get you. They have their own special MLS. So you'll need to reach out to us to get you on there. But yeah, if you are serious about getting moved here, do not hesitate to reach out. We love helping people figure out which place is going to be right for them. All right, let's get back to the video. So in Spokane, drugs, scheduled substances, it's a different story. Just like Seattle, they changed it where if you just had enough for personal use, they weren't prosecuting you. And obviously, as you probably know, marijuana is recreationally legal to smoke in your home, with many people just forgetting about that last part of needing to be inside your house to smoke it. So yes, you go downtown Spokane, you're absolutely going to be seeing people using drugs, homelessness. Now, I will say it is not as bad as Portland and Seattle, but we're also not as big. So I feel like per capita, it's probably on course, but it's not as major of a problem as some of those major cities. And as I was saying before, firearms are being more restricted here in Spokane. You can no longer buy an assault rifle. High capacity magazines are limited to 10 rounds now only. You can't have a flashlight attached to your firearm. I don't get that one at all, because wouldn't you want to be able to identify who you're about to shoot? But just like a lot of gun laws, they don't have to make sense. They just are being passed because it's keeping us safe, right? That's why Chicago's so stinking safe. They have really restricted guns. I'll get off that topic. Helmets, you absolutely have to have a helmet on when you're riding any kind of motorcycle. Government doesn't trust you to make the right decision. They're going to tell you what you need to do. And being homeless in Spokane is also not illegal. In fact, some might even say it's encouraged. Joking about that, of course. There's definitely a lot more resources, though, that are offered to people that are homeless, which, as some of you believe, that brings in more homeless and the problem doesn't ever seem to be solved. And overall, I would say that in Spokane, the judges, the prosecutors, they're much more lenient on criminals than in Idaho, and Coeur d'Alene especially. So if you're someone who likes to break the law every once in a while, maybe Spokane is a better place for you. And like I said before, this is the most definitive factor that makes Spokane different than Coeur d'Alene. The judges and the prosecutors are much more lenient on crime versus here in Coeur d'Alene, they do not put up with it. So if you're someone who likes to play close to the line or sometimes cross that line, Spokane might be better for you. Now, this next category, it exists in both places, but one is definitely going to be better than the other. It's access to the outdoors. Now, don't get me wrong, Spokane, it's a much bigger area. I mean, the width between the panhandle of Idaho is only 2 hours from Washington to Montana, so you only have so many places to go, but I also believe you have more places. So 60% of the state is federal lands, which means it's public. You get to go and access it and have lots and lots of fun. Where over in Washington, the city is so big and a lot of it's private. So yeah, you have some parks, but you're going to have a lot of people there. You have trails, but you're going to run into people that are camping illegally, that are doing drugs, that shouldn't be out there. So in Idaho, in Coeur d'Alene, you can go about 10 minutes any direction and you're going to be on a trail. There's probably not going to be that many people there. So in Washington or Spokane, you definitely have to drive a little bit further, and more than likely there's going to be quite a few people. In fact, when I've tried to go hiking in Spokane, sometimes it's hard to even find a parking spot. You run into people that are illegally camping and out there doing drugs. I definitely carry a sidearm when I am out hiking in Spokane, but it's not for the wildlife. Next category is the ease of travel. So I'm talking about the public transportation, the traffic, and the road conditions. In Spokane, you have a much better public transportation system. It runs for longer. There's more routes. Coeur d'Alene, they do have one. It's just not super great. The traffic is definitely going to be way worse in Spokane. And according to my sources, it lands right in the middle. So it's not like LA, it's not like Portland or Seattle, but you're definitely going to run into traffic around 3:30 to 6 o'clock on the freeway every single day and a lot of the main arterials. Where in Coeur d'Alene, it doesn't even rank. Yes, we get a little bit of traffic, but you're talking about maybe 5-10 more minutes to your trip. Where in Spokane, it can be 30, 40, 50 minutes sometimes. And the last factor for ease of travel is the road conditions. So how quickly they clear the snow and ice during the winter and the potholes. Now, both places, Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, they get some potholes. Difference is in Spokane, there's some really bad potholes that are just there for a very long time. There's much more roads that you have to deal with in Spokane than in Coeur d'Alene. So yes, you absolutely can bend a rim, pop a tire throughout your alignment. That's why I usually recommend people have trucks when living here. You can have that in Coeur d'Alene, but again, there's not as many roads, so they usually get to it faster. Same with clearing snow and ice. For whatever reason, Spokane just really hasn't invested that much into clearing the snow and ice. There's 650,000 people that live in Spokane County. There's a lot of roads. They could definitely use better plows, better salting machines. Coeur d'Alene, yeah, absolutely. They have it. On the side roads, you're not going to get cleared as fast, but they keep those main arterials cleared pretty dang well. Really, the expectation is if you're going to live here, you better learn how to drive in the snow. So neither one is super great, but I do think that Coeur d'Alene does a better job. Next is the education, and these are actually pretty dang close. So I don't know if it's really going to be a big factor in deciding. Nationally, Washington is 25th and Idaho is 29th. So it's a little bit harder to find those rankings in individual cities. I do think that still Spokane's going to be better than Coeur d'Alene, but at the end of the day, let's remember that public school teaches your kids what they want them to know, where they're not teaching them how to learn and how to think for themselves. So no matter what, you definitely want to be subsidizing some of that education. And where Idaho does take the cake is the homeschooling. Idaho is in the top rankings when it comes to the ease of being able to homeschool your kids, the support from the state, and the resources. I myself was homeschooled. I think that really helped me in becoming an entrepreneur, learning how to think for myself and have critical thinking skills, but everybody's got to decide what's going to be best for their kids. Next category is the people and the politics. Now, Spokane, being in a blue state, definitely going to be more progressive and liberal, but it's a far cry from people over in Seattle. I can still have conversations with people in Spokane or over in Seattle. If I tell them I'm not a liberal progressive, boy, I feel like I need to run out of there. Coeur d'Alene, definitely more conservative Republican. It is considered to be more of a liberal city compared to a lot of the small towns in Idaho. But again, I don't really see much of it. I think it's because that is where a pride parade happens. And so for the towns that don't have that, they think that they should be able to make that stop, not understanding that the Constitution absolutely gives people the right to do that. So I think it's more of a confusion thing than anything. But at the end of the day, people are definitely going to be a little bit different. But the vast majority are right in the middle going, I don't care. Just leave me alone. Let me focus on making a living and spending time with my friends and family, and just please stop destroying the country. I really think that that's in both places ultimately how people feel. The next category is your income potential. So in Spokane, you have the potential to earn up to $225,000 as a psychologist, according to ZipRecruiter.com. And in Coeur d'Alene, you have the potential to make $169,000 as a software engineer. Again, this is according to ZipRecruiter.com. Obviously, there are other categories that you can make more money if you're like a CFO or CEO. But the point of this is there is a big disparity between how much you can make in each place. Spokane, I think the minimum wage is now $16 an hour, I think. And then in Coeur d'Alene, it's $7.50 an hour. And because it's a right to work state, you can be a server and they only have to pay you like $3.35 an hour. And as long as your tips equal that minimum wage, they don't have to pay you anymore. This is a major problem that I dealt with growing up. I usually went to work in Spokane because I could make quite a bit more money. And that is still very much so the case. Luckily, Coeur d'Alene is getting some startups. They're getting some tech companies that do pay a lot better. So there is a lot more opportunity than when I was growing up. But at the end of the day, it's a much bigger city over in Spokane. So your earning potential is going to be a lot higher over there. The good news is if you live in a place like Coeur d'Alene or Post Falls, it's really not that far to Spokane. And that's what a lot of people do. Next are the crime rates. And this is going to be a very telling difference between the two areas. So in Spokane, violent crime rate is 28.6 and the property crime rate is 95.3. That is the highest by far. I've done some comparisons with a lot of different cities and I've never seen property crime that high. I mean, that's higher than Portland. That's higher than Seattle. It's wild. And really looking at Coeur d'Alene, which has a violent crime rate of 24.8 and a property crime rate of 44.7, that's over double the property crime rate, which is just wild. Now, not all of Eastern Washington is like that. I do want to clarify that really is mostly in Spokane. And having come from the low voltage security world in my 20s, I can tell you that's where a majority of the crime was happening, was around that downtown area. And the further you got away from it, the lower the crime rate was. So don't think that, oh my God, I'm going to be robbed every single week. It's not really like that, but yeah, it is pretty stinking high. And again, that has to do with the judges and the prosecutors being so lenient on the criminals. And the last category we want to look at is the overall cleanliness of each place. Now, I'm not kidding when I say this. In Spokane, they sell stickers that say, keep Spokane kind of gross. And yes, it's a play on Portland's keep Portland weird, but it's true. I mean, Spokane, it's pretty dirty. It's old, it's dirty, it's rough around the edges, but that's also why people kind of love it, right? Because it doesn't cost an arm and a leg to live there, but yet it's still a major city. And you're not out there just shopping and, admiring how pretty your city is. You actually dive more into the important things in life, like relationships and being with your kids and going on trips. And so I don't want to make it sound like Spokane is this awful place. It really isn't. I mean, some of the best things that ever happened to me were in Spokane, and I'll get into that in a second. Let's talk about Coeur d'Alene. So yes, Coeur d'Alene is very, very clean. You're going to be hard pressed to find feces anywhere. Human feces, I should say. Dog feces, you'll find it. Horse and deer and wildlife. Yes, lots of that. Not a lot of graffiti. You're probably not going to see a hypodermic needle. I mean, I've not seen one in, I can't remember how long, where, when I travel down to California to see family and I go to the city, there's literally piles of them. It just blows my mind. So yes, Coeur d'Alene absolutely takes the cake. It is way cleaner. But to be fair, there's a lot less people that live there, right? So that doesn't necessarily tell the whole story, but yes, I think people that live in Coeur d'Alene, they really care about their city. People in Spokane, I think they kind of just go, what's the point? Nobody's going to do anything about it. Why would I complain? Right. And that is true. The police out there, they are so not supported the way they need to be. They're underfunded. And I'm going to be making a video about that here this year. And I'm really excited about that. But diving into my own personal experiences, like I said, Spokane has a really special place in my heart. It's where I met my wife. It's where I got married. It's the first place that I rented a house. It's where my mom and I finally developed like a mature adult relationship after their divorce that has carried on till now. And so there's no way I would ever say Spokane sucks, don't move there. I definitely don't love seeing what's happening, but I don't love seeing what's happening in a lot of places in our country right now. But that doesn't mean that it's a bad place. It just means it's under bad management. I definitely think that if you can't afford to live in Coeur d'Alene, Spokane is a really great option. And the areas outside of Spokane. Oh my gosh, Liberty Lake, Otis Orchards, Green Acres, Spokane Valley, South Hill, Meade. I mean, all these areas are awesome. And I can say that absolutely confidently because I was a cable guy and an alarm installer. And I've been in thousands of those homes. I've been all over those neighborhoods. And I gotta say, I really do. It's got a special place in my heart. If you can't afford to live in Coeur d'Alene, Spokane is a great option. And maybe you don't want the lifestyle that Coeur d'Alene offers. Spokane and the surrounding areas are great too. But let me know in the comments, guys, which place do you think is better? Coeur d'Alene, even though it's definitely more expensive to live there, or Spokane, even though it's got quite a bit higher crime rates and some of the issues. I really love seeing people write comments. I try to respond to as many as I can and have a dialogue. I just really, really do appreciate it, and it does help the video. Make sure you give it a thumbs up if you like this video. Make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell, and if you do want more videos, right there, you can learn more about this area. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. Until the next one, I'll see you later.